Please welcome your panelists for Mobility in the Future, the Art of the Possible, moderated by CNBC anchor Brian Sullivan.
Hi. Remember the first time you went to a movie and there was a commercial? And you're like, what's this? Coca-Cola or Toyota? That's just what happened to me. This is my 18th Milken conference. I started when I was 6. I've never had a commercial at the beginning, so it's kind of cool. I was taken aback. Hi, welcome everybody. This is going to be a cool panel because not only do we have awesome people on it, but you're getting 2 for the price of 1. So, so it's $6,200 for every 30 minutes. I'm kidding. So we'll do 30 minutes with Jack and Amy. We'll do a little quick switcheroo, kind of change the topic, and move on to the second part. It's going to be very cool, and we appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much. Hope everybody's having a good conference, even though I know we're just at the beginning. So this is Mobility in the Future, the Art of the Possible. And our panelists, Jack Hollis, I want to get the title right. It's long. Group Vice President, Toyota Motors, North America.
Sure.
Is that it?
That's it.
See, Amy's business card is shorter. It's Amy Purdy, the most decorated Paralympic snowboarder. That's a lot easier to say, isn't it? So, Amy Purdy, welcome.
Thank you.
All-around champion, medalist, just general stud. Jack, Toyota's a pretty cool company, too.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
and Toyota's
I agree.
Yeah, they've done some great work, by the way, with the Paralympics. We're going to get into all that. So let's start it off here. Jack, first off, there's an interesting sort of macro discussion. It's almost philosophical in nature, which is mobility, transportation. Is it almost a human right?
Yeah.
The right to move. I know it sounds weird.
No, it doesn't sound weird at all because we talk about it all the time, Brian. That's whether you're young or old, people we talk about disabilities or able-bodied folks. There's a freedom that is kind of a human right, but in many places, or in many situations or circumstances, freedom isn't there. And quite honestly, what Toyota is committed to is creating the freedom for people to move. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. And that's what we're working on. And that's where even the art of possible.
Yeah.
We're trying to take the company to a place that says everything is possible.
Okay, it sounds a little, it sounds great,
Yep.
but it sounds a little corporate. How do you translate that sort of feel-good statement into actually helping people get around?
Yeah, that's what it is. And that's what it has to be. First of all, it's listening really well. Amy and I have been talking a lot about how do we listen to the people who have lack of freedom. So it's about listening. But 2 is taking what the current assets that our company has and applying them to any kind of person situation. Let's take, for example, for those of you, I don't know, raise your hand if you've ever had taken the keys away from an elderly parent or grandparent. Has anybody had to do that? So you can't drive? It's not fun. It's not easy. So one of the things is listening is, what is that feeling like? What is that feeling like for that person to have their freedom, which was able to go anywhere at any time, restricted? So how do you solve that? Okay, well, that's where some of the ideas around robotics and some of the ideas of autonomous driving have come from. Well, that's one kind. 2 is, how about a person, prosthetics? How is it that we can help and partner with people from walking assist robots and things that we're putting efforts for? How about a person who has born blind? How can we help that person through the technology that we are currently using in our vehicles and expand that and keep listening to make things better? So that's when it becomes really personal. And it's actually kind of where Amy and I have had an opportunity to meet 6-7 years ago in listening. And Amy, tell me more about this. And to our whole company. And that's one of the things we ended up becoming a partner, a Team Toyota athlete, was not because of just name, and that's great, but it's how do you work with one another, communicate well to make it better for others, and that's
Amy,
where we're going.
At 19, your life changed. I mean, in ways that we can't imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Not only have you obviously adapted, you've conquered it, you kicked ass, it's been spectacular. How did you adapt? And you don't need to go into the emotional part of it if you don't want to, but how did you adapt to what Jack was just talking about, which is, okay, I'm better now. You got over what you had, and you had like a 2% chance of survival, I believe.
I did. Yeah, I was a snowboarder and I was a massage therapist. Actually, I worked in this hotel. Isn't that crazy? I was a massage therapist in my
That's a
past
different
life.
panel for later.
Yeah. But it's just crazy to be back
Get
here
into that
now.
over a cocktail. I'm just not.
It's crazy to be back here now, kind of full circle. So yeah, I was kind of going on my path to live the life of my dreams and ended up losing both of my legs to something called meningococcal meningitis. Also had a kidney transplant, which there's a lot of innovation happening with kidney transplants now, which is really exciting. And so my life changed forever. Yeah, I was 19 and I thought I was going a certain direction, and all of a sudden things changed and I had to get really creative because there was nobody else to really do it for me. I wanted to snowboard. I wanted to snowboard again. I had to actually make my own snowboard feet to be able to do that.
How did you make your own snowboard?
So I didn't actually like make the metal and the pipes and everything, but I took
How did Iron Man? How did that work?
I took different parts and pieces from different feet out there, ankles from one foot and a different kind of foot and pink duct tape. They're actually in the Smithsonian right now on display, but I took different parts and put them together so that I could snowboard again and have the feet to move in the way that I need them to. And so for me, I've been able to go on to do so much outside of winning Paralympic medals. I started a nonprofit with my husband. We helped to get snowboarding into the Paralympic Games in the first place. With the help of Toyota, we've also gotten athletes into all different kind of able-bodied, what we would consider an able-bodied event like the Dew Tour. We now have adaptive snowboarding in there, so we're giving platforms to other athletes who have different types of disabilities, giving those opportunities. And for me, I mean, that's what mobility means to me. It's like Jack said, it's freedom, and it's having the resources to live our best lives and reach our fullest potential. I feel like we all have so much potential. If we're able to just have that assistance and that help, the things that we can accomplish is amazing. Yeah. If I didn't have my legs, I'd be in a wheelchair. I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do. But not just are my legs high tech, but I mean, I'm building them in my own garage as well. So they're kind of, you just have to get creative, get innovative. See, like Toyota listens to the athletes, listens to what we need. Not saying that they make my legs, but who knows what the future holds, right? The things that we can accomplish together, and what next step there is with technology.
We've got some members of the military here, so thank you all for. My dad was 10 years Navy. Don't get mad, but no. And so there's been a number of obviously servicemen and women who've come home, and they've needed some help. Yeah. By the way, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yes.
We appreciate it. So what is, and Jack, you'll probably throw a punch at me. I thought Toyota was a car company. No, but you guys do all kinds of amazing work. So bridge the gap between what people think Toyota is.
Yeah.
Okay, you make a Camry and you sell millions of them.
Yep.
How do you help here? How do you help those men and women who've come back and have lost their mobility?
I'm going to put this together pretty easily because we have such a connection with the military, and I also thank you for your service. I think it's, but the word serve is what I'll use as really what the company is about, and I'll tell you why it ties together. Toyota started as a company. Sakichi Toyota started a company. It was a loom works company. So we're not only a car company or a mobility company. We started as a loom works company, making automated looms. Why? To serve his mother. His mother was working, and he wanted to make his life. He was an engineer who wanted to make life easier for his mother. Now I say that, and it's really important that everybody understand that because that's the core of the company of Toyota. Because from that, two things became apparent, the two core pillars of Toyota. One, respect for people. He respected his mom, respected people, and he wanted to do this to help society, serve society. Two was constant improvement, or the word kaizen, about continuously improving this. So I'll make this quick. Toyota started as a loomworks company to serve his mother and others like her. The company expanded by his son to take it to a domestic Japanese automotive company to help more people, to serve more people in their transportation needs. Keeps going. Become a global automotive company to serve more, to take their technology outward further. We are being today exactly what we started with is now we want to expand further, to expand the reach to serve people, which is now becoming a mobility company. We tie in directly back to the military, which is we've had a relationship very long-standing. A former officer was one of our officers, and Hire a Heroes program, a program where we're actually not only hiring heroes who are coming back into life here after post-military service, but we're also working with their spouses. Okay, so you have one from those who've lost limbs, things that giving them opportunity, but there's also spouses and tying in. Again, it's about the word serving. How do you serve the greatest number of people? And I'm proud to represent Toyota, and this is what I get most passionate about, even our relationships. How do we serve others to make them more important than ourselves? And that truly is the core of the company and the core of our relationship, both with the military and with whoever we have an opportunity to partner with.
Is anybody else, I'm going to reveal something dirty about myself. Is anybody else here kind of like a comic book nerd? I mean, I'll admit it. You remember the show like Robotech, cartoon in the 80s? Like you get inside these mechanized things, and anyway, I guess I'm a total nerd. I apologize. Nobody.
Brian, kind of.
No one raised their hand. Whoops. What is Toyota going to be? Like, I mean, I picture this world literally of like, you guys are doing some cool stuff with the robotics. Like, literally, am I going to be able to get into an exoskeleton suit? Like, what's coming that's going to help super empower mobility?
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, well, so Hugh Herr of MIT, I think he was going to sit on this panel with us, and he was talking about these amazing, somewhat like these exoskeletons, not these huge things that you step into, but if you think about just the longevity that we could have if we have less pressure on our joints and stuff when we're running and when we're working out. There's different types of robotics that I think eventually could be used just for that. It's not just disability or ability, it's of all abilities. How can we have longevity, right? How can we like keep what we have strong and take the pressure off of our joints? And it just, I mean, really the possibilities are endless with what's out there.
And Amy and I get a chance to talk so many about these different words that start to happen about possibilities that are out there. And even in our Olympic campaign, you heard this word, or this campaign about starting your impossible.
Yeah.
What's out there, I'm not going to try to tell you what the end result is. I can tell you that what Toyota is driven by is listening to the need of somebody and saying, we can solve that. And I swear to you, one of the things that's amazing to me is that inside of the company, when there's somebody says that's not possible to fix, the company says, oh, well, that's good. That's a good challenge. Let's take it on. That's an element that this word of starting your impossible is continuous in our whole company.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do. So I can't tell you what the end result is, but I can tell you we're working on things for legs, walking, mobility, single-person mobility devices and or vehicles, autonomous vehicles, but there's so many options that are going to come in the future. There's no way to solve them all now.
When I think about, you mentioned it earlier, Jack, when I think about the vision impaired,
Sure.
and I think about autonomous cars, we're going to be in a world pretty soon, right, where literally if you're blind, you're going to still be able to call up a car.
Absolutely.
A driverless car is going to pick you up, say, take me to the mall, take me to grandma's, whatever it is, and you're going to be able to get around quickly, safely, and I would imagine seamlessly, almost with no
And I think that is what you will find, even as we get closer to the 2020 Olympic Games. You're going to find there is a challenge amongst both Toyota and even the Japan Olympic Committee of how do we have people who arrive into the country and it can move seamlessly with any physical bodies, any age. Those words seamlessly and how to make that happen is what's important.
the Shinkansen. We'll talk to Pierre in the next segment about
Sure,
fast trains.
You should.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, my point that I would want to make about this whole thing is not knowing the end point. It's knowing about this idea of literally, truly, while it sounds corporate and corny, it is to start your impossible by taking challenges that you don't think have a solution yet and going after it. That's the fun. I mean, that's where innovation comes in.
And we can't highlight Amy's story enough. I mean, I want you to picture this. You go through what she went through. She lost her legs below the knee. She lost a kidney. She had a 2% chance of survival. What was it? 9 months later, you're back on a snowboard?
7 months later. But 4 months after, 4 months after
I was
I got
25% wrong.
But 4 months after I got my new legs, I was back up on a snowboard. And exactly, start your impossible. My impossible at that time was just getting up in my legs for the first time. It was just taking that first step. But by taking that first step, it then led to realizing, wait, maybe I can snowboard again. But wait, there's no legs out there, so I have to build them. So then I did that. And then, okay, now
Did they advise against it? And somebody say, Amy, don't do that. Did people say, don't do that, Amy?
Yeah, plenty of people. I called every adaptive ski school across the country, and they'd say, just take your legs off, sit in a monoski, which is amazing for some people who are in wheelchairs and want to do that. But I wanted to use my legs. I wanted to use the legs that I have. And so I had to figure it out on my own. And then through that, I was able to start a nonprofit organization called Adaptive Action Sports with my husband, where we help the military, kids with disabilities, get involved in action sports. Then through that, we were able to team up with Toyota, get snowboarding into the Paralympics, also get snowboarding into these other big able-bodied kind of events, which is kind of weird to talk about. Like, we were talking about the words that we use, descriptions of disabled, able-bodied, super abled, which Jack likes to say. So we're always trying to find the correct words, because it's a little confusing these days, because you look at Paralympians and you see the complete opposite as a disability. Disabled means you're not able, and Paralympians are exactly the opposite of that. If anything, we're somewhat super abled because we've been able to kind of turn off part of, we've lost a part, but then we've gained so much more. We've gained other senses. We've been able to turn into better athletes now than we ever were before. So anyway.
You needed to slow down, by the way. I couldn't keep up. But we needed a Toyota to take us from the speaker room to this. Couldn't have walked further. But I wonder if we're going to get to that point where we will be super able if we build some of these things that we're talking about. But Amy, as you work with kids especially, it's physical. Mm-hmm. It's mental. It's emotional.
Yeah.
What's the biggest hurdle?
Oh gosh. Honestly, let me think. Probably the parents. Maybe. Yeah. Letting them know, like,
some things never change.
Yeah, right. Like, the kids can do this. They're good. We have.
That's a helicopter parent sound. Yeah.
We worked with this young girl, Jane Richard, she lost her leg in the Boston bombing. She lost her brother as well. He was the only little boy to die in the bombing. And when her family came to us, they said, we haven't seen her smile since she lost her brother and since she lost her leg. And she came out, she learned to skateboard with us. We love skateboarding and snowboarding because they're very independent sports. Like, there's no rules. You can do whatever you want. You can be as creative as you want and have fun. And there's no right, there's no wrong. And after she worked with us, we have this photo of her with this huge smile on her face. And that's why we do what it is we do, and just being able to show what the possibilities are. It's not easy, obviously, having prosthetic legs or losing a limb or having some sort of physical impairment. It's not easy, but it's also the challenge that's exciting, like Jack said. It's the challenge of trying to figure things out. I'm constantly challenging myself. Just this past weekend, I started my impossible again with learning to surf. And this
Will you slow down, please? Yeah. You're making me nervous now. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It was a big deal trying to learn to surf for me, because I have huge obstacles. Are my legs going to come off? Are my feet going to rust? Will they move the right way I need them to? Am I going to sink to the bottom of the ocean?
No, let's go back to it here. Anybody here surf? Like, I grew up. How do you get up?
It's hard. I mean, that was another part.
That's the hardest part.
Start with the impossibility.
You have to be able to, like, pop up, and I had all these reasons of why not to do it, and those reasons won for years. Even as a snowboarder, I thought surfing is way too hard, way too complicated, too much to think about. And then this weekend, I was in Hawaii, and I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it with duct tape.
Did you do it because you wanted to surf? Because, snowboarding and surfing, it's kind of a similar type thing. Or did you just want to do something that was impossible?
Both. I wanted to figure it out. I don't know any other double-leg amputee who surfs. So
if you get into high wire walking or something, let us know, all right? So we can stop you.
I think there's a lot of it that's like, what is possible? What is possible? People can say, oh, I've never seen that before, but that's maybe because somebody hasn't gone out there to do it. So why not try it? Why not figure it out? And second try, I was up on my board. I had to do a lot. There's a lot of duct tape. There's all types of things going on that I had to do, but I did it. And it was so empowering. This whole time I've stopped myself because I believed I wasn't capable for one reason or another. There's too much to do. So starting your impossible for me is just take that first step. Get out there with what you got, and then you figure out what you need, what innovation needs to happen. And I think Toyota's done such a great job of listening to athletes and people who want to reach their fullest potential. What is it you want to do? Where do you want to go? And how can we help you get there?
And I want to tie that back into something you said about some of the challenges working with different groups. It could be parents or whatever. But one of the words, and I want to make sure to honor Amy as well as the other athletes we've been on. There's the word inspiration. So there could be lots of different problems you can't really define. But one of the things that you can define is what all of us want. Is we want to be inspired towards things. Amy started not only working with us back really in 2012, and it kind of expanded in 2014, and we went on and maybe you can even talk about that, some of the different ways that our relationship has expanded. But the one thing is about being an inspiration to others. And I think that in kind of the world we're living in today, we're looking for not just stories, we're looking for truth that inspires. And I want to mention that because I want to highlight that Amy was a star in one of our television commercials for a Camry back in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. That we started getting stories back or phone calls from people that she was inspiring based upon just the commercial, watching her story, took them to YouTube, saw about the TED Talks where she talks about the connection. When that can inspire a young person of any physical ability, that's a major victory. This past year with some of the Olympic marketing, Lauren Wollstonecraft, another person who kind of overcame wanting to go back to skiing, and she's from Canada, and she talks about her story and the amount of phone calls she's getting. It's about opening up this opportunity to inspire others or to really respect and love other people. And I don't know if you want to take off on that, but the inspiration or maybe things that have come back to you in the relationship that you don't know until you start something, but the amount of inspiration you've given, especially to kids or anyone else, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's not like you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to inspire the world today. That's what I'm going to do. In fact, I just feel inspired myself. I mean, I'm inspired. I'm inspired to figure it out. I'm inspired to do the things that I want to do. And once I figure that out, I want to help other people do the same. But I think something that's really important, too, is my relationship with Toyota. It's not that, Toyota didn't step in and say, oh, we want to use this girl who's got 2 prosthetic legs to inspire the world. We have a very organic relationship. It's almost family for me. The way that it started was my first truck that I drove was that I ever bought myself was a Toyota. That was before I lost my legs. When I was in the hospital.
Because they last forever, by the way. I'm not just saying that because you're here.
That's what I told my dad. That's what I was telling my dad. But so when I was in the hospital, I lost my legs. My truck was a stick shift, and my dad sold my truck because we thought that I wouldn't be able to drive it again. So I ended up losing my Toyota. Years later, I do a TED Talk, and one of the marketing directors for Toyota happened to be in the audience. He came up afterwards and said, "You've changed my life. I love your speech. If you ever need anything, let me know." He hands me his Toyota card. I see it. I see Toyota. And I said right away, I need a new car.
Exactly.
And a week later, I had a new car. And a week after that, my organization had a new van so that we could transport athletes to different events. And all of this was going on before the Paralympics were ever even a possibility for us. That was before I even had a platform where I could give back to Toyota. So what's just, it just goes to show how forward-thinking Toyota was to work with me, this girl who's got 2 prosthetic legs, but who wanted to change the world and be involved in that. To now where Toyota is sponsoring the Paralympic Games, and I can be a spokesperson and an athlete on that side of things as well. And but it's been this organic relationship that just started with them wanting to we had the same values, so how do we team up and share those same mission? And
when you told the story, I wasn't even actually, maybe this is a sign of the times, because I don't even think about your prosthetic limbs when you're talking about driving. I thought, thank God someone can drive a stick shift anymore.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
And now I
yes,
can drive
that
a
stick is huge. And when you got me choked up a little bit. You're talking about this kids. I mean, I have kids. I'm sure everybody in the audience, most of the audience has kids, and you think about these kids and these teenagers. There was a kid last year. I'm a big car racing fan, and so thanks for all the work Toyota does, by the way, in racing. Made it cool. And Rip Dan Gurney, who was a huge Toyota guy for years. Yeah. There was a kid last year in England, up-and-comer, had a terrible wreck, lost both of his legs below the knee, and he's back racing. He's back racing. And literally, and he's had to learn so many things. You guys should meet, this kid, just to get back in the car, especially with a wreck of that magnitude. Right. So when you guys, Toyota, you're talking about starting your Impossible, you've done a lot of this work, not only with all the stuff on the Paralympics, but also in motorsports. So how does Toyota approach these problems? Do people come to you and say, here's a problem, solve it, or do you go and look for problems to solve?
Yep.
Because I got a lot of problems. Yeah. We'll talk afterwards.
We can talk afterwards. Yeah. Actually, it's both. We do seek problems, and we are there listening. We're actively seeking problems to solve, but also listening to people on how to solve them. I'll bring a couple pieces together. TRD, Toyota Racing Development. They're outstanding off-road, on-road, NASCAR, excellent partners. They want to solve problems. We heard about some mobility issues. So we brought in TRD, the wind tunnel, to be a part of our athlete, kind of listening to some of the issues some of the athletes were having, of how can we use aerodynamics by learning, taking technology from a NASCAR and aero over the car, and apply that to different athletes. Okay, and I can go on, and I don't want to use that all that time, but I do want to say is what we're taking is there's no technology piece that we're using just for a car that we're not trying to apply then to someone's life to solve another problem. That's what's fun. So we have a bunch of examples where TRD 2, 3, 4, where we're using their technology to making life better, and now we can seek a problem to solve because we've learned it. People skiing, adaptive skiing, as in some cases downhill with loss of sight. I mean, people are competing nearly blind or blind. How do you do that when you track?
It's insane.
It's insane. But how about when we do that? We have a team of athletes, a couple, in the wind tunnel to learn how the aerodynamics could work so you can follow better in a track of somebody when you can't see. Come on, people. That's not a...
I think, Amy, I've got the title of your next book because you just threw it out when you talking about surf. Will my feet rust? That's gonna,
Rusty feet and duct tape.
It's so funny. But to hear you just talk so casually and coolly about it, like you're trying to surf. Okay, what's a real problem? Forget about the fact that I've got these prosthetic limbs. Like, are they going to be too heavy for me to swim?
Yeah,
right. Because you need to be able to swim really well when you're surfing, right? And if they're too heavy, how do you make sure they're light enough they won't rust?
Right.
It's these problems that the majority of us never even think about. I just think, am I too fat to get on the surfing board? Not will my feet rust.
We both might struggle.
Right. Yeah, and I just love the idea that Toyota already has technology that could potentially be used. Different materials.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe we need to make a pair of surfing feet.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, really, maybe that will really take me places.
That would be exactly.
Do you know a company that can do that, Jack? I'm just.
You
throwing
know
that out there.
anybody?
Is there anybody?
But
And Mr. Toyota is actually a fan of Amy's, correct?
So I need to make that connection. So one of the words about inspiration is Mr. Toyota, Akio Toyota, our current CEO and president. He met Amy, which was the inspiration to go further. We were already going to connect with the Olympics. On the Paralympic side, and Amy, maybe you could talk about meeting him, but that was the inspiration for us to go and not just become a partner of IPC, become a sponsor, and even with NBC, of the whole Paralympic Games. It is going further with that and going places, and I don't want to talk about even meeting him. And
yeah, I mean,
what's he like, by the way? When your name's on the door of a company that size, I imagine life's pretty interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Slightly different spelling, but that's fine.
Slightly.
He's amazing. He's amazing, and it's kind of crazy because he'll walk around with an entourage and come run up to me and get so excited to see me, and other people are so excited to see him, which he's just incredible, and obviously to be an inspiration to somebody at that caliber, and somebody who inspires me. I'm inspired by his values. I'm inspired by this desire to help people. Like, how do we help people get places in their life? It's just incredible, and for me, I don't know, inspiration's contagious. I'm grateful I have the opportunity to kind of give back.
How important is that to have? I mean, you have the support. Sounds like he's a fanboy, to be honest with you, of the guy that his name is on the door.
I'll tell you, and I wrote a book, a New York Times bestseller called On My Own 2 Feet, which just released 2 months ago in Japan, and he wrote the foreword to it. And the rap, which is just unbelievable. I mean, it's quite surreal to me, and I'm just grateful that together we're able to do some pretty amazing things, and I'm excited for the future and what we're able to do even more.
And I want to add one piece to it, because it's not just, and I say this sincerely, it's not just about Amy, nor is it just about Toyota. All of the technology and pieces we have, especially when it comes to fuel cell vehicles or different technologies, we've made them open sourced, right? We've made a majority of this. So when we team up with and learn from Amy, it's not to just help Amy or to help a para-athlete. It's not just to help Toyota. It's back what I talked about earlier about this whole expansion of our company. It's about how do you help people
share it
globally. How do you share that for the better? And because I don't want to make this just about Toyota, it's about what Toyota believes is right to help people become more mobile.
When you guys help her make these incredible surfing feet, others will have that, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know we're going to talk about this right when we're done. We're going to how could we do that?
Right.
Yeah, well, if
ideas.
she wants to drive a race car,
and I do.
Yeah.
Jack, I was going to talk to you about that.
are you guys going to help out? Do we have your word now right here?
Yeah.
We're on the record.
Well, we were together last year. Was it last year or the year before? Daytona 500. And
I did the pace car, but no, I'm talking about a real race car.
All right.
Yeah, she's
I'm talking
pace car,
moving my way
Like
up.
I said, we got to start our impossible. All right.
Starting your listen. It's a you wake up, you hear these stories and these inspirational tales, and I mean it.
Yeah.
It's like I get a little choked up because you just think like when you have kids and your folks and you went through this stuff, you're just kicking ass and you're inspiring a lot of people. Like I'm going to go jog 10 miles tonight because I'm so, embarrassed about my lack of activity. You've just been a cool inspiration. More Paralympics, by the way, for you? Are you done collecting medals? Or?
Yeah, Amy, what do you think?
I know.
So are you retiring, Amy? Or is it a Michael Phelps-like retirement where it's every 4 years you come back?
It's kind of that. But I will say, I thought I was going to retire. I actually had quite a few injuries this past year, so I thought I was going to retire. I thought I just got to get through the games. But what's crazy is because of those injuries, I became a better athlete than I ever was before. Because I had to focus on other parts of my riding. I had a major nerve injury down both my arms. I couldn't move my arms for about 4 months. Couldn't pick up a glass of water, couldn't text. Kind of this crazy, I couldn't text. It was horrible. But it was crazy. Here I had lost my legs, when I was 19, and then I lost the mobility in my arms, and it was incredibly scary, the scariest thing I've ever gone through. But I decided I needed to do rehab anyways. I needed to do physical therapy anyways, so why not continue to snowboard? Why not see what happens? And because I couldn't use my arms as well as I wanted to as far as pulling out of the start gates go, I could pull, but not as hard as I wanted to. I had to think of other strategy. I had to think of what do I have to get me ahead. And mentally, I was in the strongest headspace I've ever been in my life. I started thinking about different types of strategy of, okay, I'm going to be behind, but how do I get ahead? What is it that, at what moment am I going to get? I'm going to get good at chasing so I can scare the girls in front of me so that I can get ahead. Whatever I need to do, and it made me a better rider. And I ended up coming out with a silver medal this year. So it kind of all goes back for me to this idea of disabled and super abled, of you lose one sense and you gain another sense, and just being able to kind of change that conversation of what it looks like these days to have not just a physical impairment, but actually be able to really rise above that and thrive because of it. And that's just kind of been the name of my game.
And it's been an awesome tale. Amy, Purdy, Jack Hollis, thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
And Brian, just to inspire you.
Oh, yes, this is for you.
Oh, thank you.
On your racing days.
Now, I'm not going to put it on now only because my ears stick out even more when I wear a hat, so I'll just do it in private. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Jack
Brian.
and Amy.
Thank you.
Now we call this technically the old switcheroo. I think that's a correct term. So we got Phil, Steve, and Pierre. Why don't they come on up? We'll continue the conversation. I'll slide over.
Thanks.
God, thank you.
Told you, getting 2 panels for the price of 1 today. How are you going to follow up on that?
I'm not going to sit in this chair. I'm going to move somewhere else.
Yeah. That was a great, really.
For part 2 of the session, please welcome your panel on urban transportation.
We have a tough act to follow. We should have done this one first. You know what I mean? That was just a fantastic conversation. We're going to broaden it out now a little bit with a conversation regarding to how do we, so we've talked about some of the macro big picture stuff. Let's get it, Toyota's doing some good work, but so are other companies. But let's talk about some of the hurdles to that, which is not only just how do we move, but what does the future look like from a mass transit perspective? It's not just automobiles, also planes and trains as well. And by the way, I think the government might have something to say about policy, and there's a lot of connections as well to this. So we've got this great panel for you here today. We got the former governor of Tennessee, Phil Bredesen. We got Steve Morris of AECOM. And I'm going to screw up your last name, Pierre, and I apologize. I'm not 100%. You can tell from my sound of my voice, I've been a little bit sniffly. I blame the flight, by the way. Pierre Beaudoin.
Yeah, it was not a Bombardier airplane. That's probably why.
It was a filthy, dirty Boeing. It was awful. No. Do you cross-cut? I mean, because you didn't send the plane for me this year, Pierre, so this panel's not going to go well for you. I'm just joking.
You didn't tell me.
I'm just joking. He's the chairman of the board of Bombardier, obviously well known for airplanes, but also trains, and a bunch of cool things here. So, guys, we really appreciate it. We've got the whole side here. The people that want to build it, make stuff fast, and then to make sure that we get this all done. Pierre, start with you. What does, from a mass mobility standpoint, what does the future look? We see all these cool things. Elon Musk wants to build a 700-mile-an-hour Hyperloop under where we're sitting probably right now in Baltimore as well. What is 10 years from now? How are we going to get around?
Well, in many ways, it's going to be similar to today, I would say. People like to talk about this cool new product, this new way of doing things. But the reality is people are moving. The cities are getting bigger. And you'll need mass transit. The subway moves 50,000 people an hour, so you can't replace that with cars or other means. But what's interesting to me is how technology is going to make this whole travel journey more efficient. So because the reality is sometimes hard to get to the subway, and then some hard to get to your ultimate
In LA, they might say it's impossible.
Well, in LA, right? But
Some
LA
interesting planning there. We'll get to that with Phil.
right. LA is a good example. Is now how do you plan a system in a city that's already congested, and how do you are efficient at putting a system in place that will help the travel in the city. So for me, technology. I'll just use an example that we need to think about: autonomous vehicles. How will that affect mass transit? Well, you just think of the huge parking lots that are at the end of each of the subway lines in the suburbs. Well, if you have autonomous vehicles, you probably don't need these parking lots anymore, because why would people leave a car doing nothing the whole day? So how would those cars take people to the subways, take people to the mass transit equipment, and then what would be the solution for the last mile or the last kilometer? I mean,
That's the hardest part, isn't
in
it?
LA, I'm walking here this morning. I noticed nobody does that. It's probably because the distance are very, very long. And the reality is you're going to walk a mile or two. It takes a lot of time. So then you default to taking your car. But in the future, you just show up and the vehicle will pick you up and you're able to go. So we reflect a lot on the technology that will help make our mass transit equipment more efficient.
But Phil, as you know, listen, and your state, Tennessee, Nashville, has got this, they're trying to get a whole massive transportation project done, build a big tunnel. Right. Now, Boston had a little issues with the tunnel, so I know that there's been some people who've pushed back. All this cool stuff we're talking about still has to be voted on and approved. What are the policy and political hurdles to accomplishing some of this really cool stuff that we're talking about?
I think there are several, and they probably differ depending on the size and history of the city. I mean, in a city like a Los Angeles or a Boston or New York, where there's a long history of people depending on public transportation across the boards, it's one set of issues. In a Nashville, which is much more like any number of cities throughout the rest of the country, who are starting to face these transportation problems, and in which there's not some long history of mass transit being a fundamental part of the infrastructure of the city. There's a certain amount of convincing of the public that has to go on that this is in fact desirable. We've long had a bus system, but there's nobody in this room who takes the bus to work in Nashville. And the problem for us there has been more political, which is to say, how do you convince people this is a sensible solution? How do you convince people that a spoke and hub system, which might have made sense a century ago, is still the appropriate kind of thing for a city like Nashville? Because,
I mean, and Steve, chime in here, because when you talk about, like, let's put them together. I mean, somebody owns that parking lot that Pierre just referred to. The government probably makes a bunch of money selling parking passes or daily meters, and now we're talking about wiping that out as a source of revenue. There's all these. You guys build these huge projects. I mean, you're building, I think, the stadiums for the World Cup in Qatar, correct? And these massive ports. I mean, that's got to be a huge part of the challenge.
Yeah, look, I think it all starts with you look at the city and you look at the area surrounding the city and you've got, and you look at it like that. And I think for all the rise of technology, I think you start with the basics of trying to say, well, how is this city going to work and how does everything connect together? And yeah, for redeveloping that car space, the car park space is a great opportunity for developing places for people to live who want to be right on the middle of a
but somebody has a vested interest in that parking lot, is my point. They're going to be like, hell no, you're not getting rid of the parking lot.
Look, and for me, I mean, when we've just heard about solving the impossible, I mean, who are we to say that this stuff cannot be done? And for me, for sure, there's a huge increase in the population and the average age and all of those things. But at the same time, you've got this incredible technology that Pierre was talking about. You've got some of the stuff that Toyota and others are doing. For me, as a company like us, in 150 countries, in 500 cities, you can see every possible solution. But for me, the excitement in these almost seemingly intractable problems is now, look how many more tools we've got in the box to try and solve this thing. You don't ride a bus to work. Well, some people do. And if companies like ours can make that bus system slightly more selective, make it go faster, then in somewhere like Cleveland, the ridership increased by 65% and the speed increased by 35%. by just tweaking around the corner. So it's definitely not impossible.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we talk too much about a system rather than the whole plan of how people are going to improve their life by better traveling. So we see systems all over the world, and sometimes there's a monorail that's implemented without any connection to it. And of course, it's a failure because then people can't get.
Oh, you've been to Newark Airport. Anybody here live in the New York area? All right. How do you get to the airport? How do you guys get to the airport? Yeah. Because it's amazing in this country. I was in Hong Kong. I gave my bag to the at the central train station. Never saw it again. It showed up in. I took a high-speed train to the airport. They took my bag at the rail terminal, and it arrived back in New York. And I've like many people in this room, traveled around the world. I mean, America's a disgrace when it comes. I mean, I hate to say that, right? But nothing has improved. In New York, we won't take a train to the airport because we don't have one. Well, and if we do it, we're afraid it's going to break down, and we won't make the flight.
Well, it's a fantastic example you use, because if I'm going to have to carry my bag to the train station, put it on the train, then you get to the airport and you walk like in Heathrow, you walk like
a mile and a half, yeah.
Right, with your baggage, you're going to say, well, I'll take Uber, I'll take a taxi, whatever. So when a city like Hong Kong thinks of the traveler, finding the solution, then you're kind of strange not taking the train, because that's the solution that makes the most sense, most comfortable. So it's making the product attractive to people. In Belgium, as an example, they took the trams. There was a lot of vandalism in the trams. Yeah. People painted. They said, you know what? These are ugly. You don't want to get into it. They put leather. They made them look like fancy cars. Guess what? Vandalism went away, and now people felt that they should take the tram because it was like their car. It was a comfortable environment they would use every day. So it's about thinking about the trip itself, I would say.
Yeah, it's the art of the possible in a way. I mean, and that's why if you land at JFK, Steve, and I'm sure you probably have a driver waiting, because otherwise you have to take that monorail to the A train and then a 42-stop, 70-minute ride into New York, and then that may not put you. You're not going to do it. Yep. I mean, unless you're just looking to experiment and see what it's like. But those are the challenges of dealing with an older city. If you're building a new city, you're smart, right? Nashville's growing. You guys have this opportunity to do something cool at the beginning because the city's growing so quickly. New York, you're treading on old ground. How do you get around? How do you solve these problems in not Qatar, which is growing and new and has a lot of open space, but in older places where there's just resistance everywhere you go, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think
and then jump in.
when you I mean, I lived in Dubai before I came across, and now I'm enjoying the LA traffic. So I think you see, the additional challenge that some of that. Yeah, look, here's the bottom line: that in order to put in some of these great new systems like the transit in Montreal we're working on, you have to disrupt an existing city, and it's unpopular. And I think that balance between short and long term is where you're trying to get everything, really working for you. Because the number of systems that, I mean, Newark is one thing, but many great transit systems, the bits that you are loving in Hong Kong at the moment, who's to say they weren't deeply unpopular when somebody started digging up the streets right in front of you? As we'll be digging up Wilshire Boulevard shortly to get
that should go well.
Yeah, go well. But hey, we've got to get this stuff together, and I think when the politicians and guess what? I mean, talked about listening to people. Well, engage the people. I came from Phoenix. We did a great job of engaging the community. Say, hey, what do you guys want? And what matters to you? And guess what? Then we design a better transit system as well. Did we get 100% people on board? No. But did we do the best job we could do to make it the system people wanted, get the politicians, the funders on board? Yes, we did.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is some of the cities you've talked about, I mean, the European cities and whatever, I mean, have a much more top-down, nationalized financing system for these kinds of things, and I think it's typical in this country. I mean, back in the days when a significant piece of the funding for mass transit would come in the form of a federal government overlay, it was easier to get these things done. There was a way that it tied it together, and people just had to fit themselves into that process. I mean, today, in Nashville, and the referendum for this is tomorrow, actually.
How's it going to go?
I do not know the answer to that.
What do you think?
Okay. I don't care to state.
Should we flip a Okay,
It's,
let's flip a
I
coin.
think the last thing I need to be doing is weighing in on this subject on the day before the election.
Can you speak into my phone here? My
Yes.
Twitter account is...
You know, you have to put these things together out of a lot of individual pieces, and it's a lot harder to do it that way. But the kind of thing you're describing in Phoenix, I think is a beginning for that. And I think so much of the frontier of this, you know, is not so much a fast train to JFK in New York and so on. It's all of this next generation of size cities in the country, the next level down, that are beginning to really need this, but for which it's not a tradition in the city, for which there's not the overarching federal structure that lets you fit into that, and we're having to do it ourselves.
But, you know, I just like to use these panels as a perfect personal vehicle to air grievances. So let's just
go
go
ahead.
there.
Go on then. Yeah.
Why not? Hell.
I'm not used to that.
I live in central New Jersey, Pierre, and when I want to go to D.C., I drive.
Okay.
I drive.
Yeah.
Because it's faster than our high-speed rail.
Right. No,
And I'm
but-
not driving that fast. I just want to be clear. Okay, why, and you're a train and plane company for the most part. Why is America lagged so greatly? You know, the Acela in Rhode Island is doing 48 miles an hour in parts of Rhode Island. That's an actual number.
And-
why?
Yeah, and it's a train we made, by the way. And
I'm not blaming the trains. I'm blaming the
no, but that's
tracks.
a great question.
It's the tracks.
Because I've had that conversation so many times. It's cool to say we're going to put in a brand new high-speed train. It'd be good, be good for us. But the reality of this corridor is looking at the overall infrastructure. And for example, better signaling system, giving priorities to passenger rather than freight. And that's complicated because freight also needs to move in the country.
And they own the tracks, right?
And
CSX owns a lot of those
and
tracks.
that's a decision America, and includes Canada, made a long time ago. We sold all the rail beds, or most of them, to the freight company because we decided to move freight on rail rather than more than just the road.
Yeah.
So, but we can decide to continue freight, but maybe the trains are not as heavy, so they don't make the rail bent. And you know, people, when I say that, they realize, they said, is the rail bent? Well, just go on the road where there's a lot of trucks. There's grooves on the road. It's the same thing on the rail. So there's no overpass, underpass in many areas on the Acela. So it's ridiculous that you're going to have a high-speed train and you're going to pass at the street level. So if
Like literally, some guy's gonna be at the stop, like nobody's coming.
Oh, yeah,
all of a sudden,
exactly.
yeah.
So you need overpass, underpass. So very often I get in those conversations, which is not necessarily good for us. I said, before you plan a whole new equipment, look at your infrastructure and look at where you can speed up the infrastructure, speed up the overall journey. Maybe a last point, we were talking about major city and technology, and it's not always about a new system, a new subway, a new tram, and so on. So very often using technology, you can increase the capacity. So in London, just by changing the whole signaling system, it's a big job, but the software that control these trains, we reduce the headways between trains to 30 seconds. So that means more people without new equipment. So
Software fix.
Software fix, software that controls the overall safety of the train on the track. So technology today is going to enable us to do a lot more than we used to do with the existing infrastructure.
Yeah, let's be optimistic. That's what I like about the Milken Conference. A lot of big thoughts and optimism. Steve, what's possible? It's the art of the possible. What can we do? Like, who's got some big ideas right now? Can you give us a glimpse into the future?
Yeah, so something a lot of our clients talk to us about. When I started off in this industry 30 odd years ago, I was drawing, you know, with ink on tracing paper, you know, basically in the way the industry's worked for like hundreds of years, bit of concrete, bit of steel, straight lines where you can, you know, all that sort of stuff. Now I look at, you know, the kind of people we're doing, the kind of work we're doing, the autonomous, and people have talked about it, it's the autonomous vehicles, it's the smart cities where, you know, the individual is talking to the piece of mobility, is talking to the rest of the system. And it's when you start to put that stuff together that it is not crazy to think, you know, somebody once talked about hard trends, which is say, well, you know your next iPhone's going to have have a bigger memory. You know, there's a whole bunch of things happening about Internet of Things, sensors. You know that stuff is going to happen. It's a question of when. But it's well possible. And you know, who are we after the first panel to talk about something that's impossible? You know, with all this incredible technology, in 20 years' time, then I think it will be totally transformed.
Let me ask you guys a question, though. In Nashville, as people are considering this, I think one of the fundamental hesitations people have is whether we are, with a bus and light rail and tunnel system, sort of buying into a 50-year-old technology that gets updated and tweaks as time goes on, as opposed to looking down the road to what might be the future, whether it be autonomous vehicles or something else. And a city like Nashville has grown so that it's not really a hub and spoke system. It's a cross.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a matrix system of transportation. Is it a mistake to be doubling down on these older technologies and just keeping to try to marginally improve them?
Look, I think it depends a lot on the planning of the overall city. But my view, and I think Pierre talked a little bit of this, I think that one of the interesting things for me is how you close that. How you navigate through that gap of the next 20 years when you know that out there is this incredible disruptive technology. I think the basics are still going to be there. And I think to lay down some of the big fundamental people moving pieces of that jigsaw are still very much well worthwhile doing. But try and do that in the knowledge that you have to be flexible and resilient, all the cyber attacks, all of the different things that could happen. So flexible and resilient and imaginative with an eye on the future, but keeping the basics of what really works and building in the opportunity that maybe the end mile node could be something you can't even imagine now. But that doesn't mean that you can't move those big people from that big residential area to that big work producing area using a system that it may look like 50-year-old technology, but by the time Pierre and Jack and the team's guys have done that stuff, it's going to be pretty modern on the inside.
Yeah, it's amazing that the time to fly across the United States hasn't changed since I was a baby. You know, the first 747 went into service in 1969, and they're still being flown. I came across country as an 8th grader for a school trip. I grew up here to D.C., and it took the exact same amount of time. You know, the Concorde is out of service. It's not just about mobility as a service, Pierre. It's also speed and stuff like that. I'm a little obsessed with speed. I apologize.
Yeah, well, so am I.
Why not? I mean, on the private jet side, it's gotten so good. When do we get that next leap on air travel? It seems weird that we haven't
and you
gotten
bring
better.
up a good point. I'm not sure people are ready to pay. In fact, I'm pretty sure people are not ready to pay for supersonic travel because it will.
Is that the hurdle? The technology obviously exists.
Technology is not really there to make it an efficient way. But we can get people. I'm back to the same subject with the train. We can get people point to point faster. So this hub and spoke system in the air really what makes crossing the country difficult for a lot of people, at least getting to a medium-sized city. So what we specialized on is trying to design an airplane, which we just started to deliver, that costs the same per seat as a big airplane to fly so that you can go from medium city to medium city. Well, suddenly your travel time has cut almost by half because you're not going through the big hubs and you're going direct. So I think what you're going to see in the short term is more airplanes that are smaller but more efficient to take people directly at the same price because people are not going to be willing to pay double to fly. So for me, that's what it's all about, taking the inefficiency out of the system.
What was the biggest hurdle in doing that?
Technology of what we can learn with computers today, how to make better aerodynamics, better materials to make the airplane lighter, so a lot of composite, and also engine technology that permits to lower fuel consumption. Our new C-Series, just to give you a figure, compared to an old 737 that you'll see, the smaller 737s you see used in the US in large quantity, the new C-Series can have up to 50% less fuel consumption because of the aerodynamic and the new engine technology. Now, if you go with the more modern 37s, it's still about 20%. This is huge amounts. So in the end, you get more efficient by applying technology and know-how into your program.
Are we going to get to a point where, and I'm sorry, I'm just asking for a friend, where semi-private jet travel is accessible to them? I know the costs have come down. You got these wheels up and net jets and stuff. your choices right now are pretty much either be really, really rich or have a rich friend who has a plane or get on that old 737. Are we going to get to a point in our lifetimes where we're going to have almost Uber of the air that's affordable?
Well, in short distance, there's a lot of projects being looked at.
There's a few, yeah, but I mean like cross country.
But cross country,
New York to Miami.
yeah, we constantly analyze models where you could bring less people directly. So it's not a corporate airplane, but you have less people. It's less of an experience of being, with 200-300 people. I think this is becoming more affordable, and that's why I was talking about this airplane. Going all the way to corporate airplane for individuals at a more reasonable cost. There is technology from an application perspective today that permit owners of airplane to share rides and to post their ride on an application so that they can share the cost. So it makes it more affordable.
If you were governor of Tennessee and you decided you're going to put a high-speed rail between Nashville and Memphis, this is okay, would you get a call from like the airline CEO that was big in the hub in Nashville, be like, Governor Bredesen, what exactly are you doing here?
Not in that particular case, because there's very little air service in that. But the answer certainly is yes. If we wanted to become part of a consortium to include Atlanta and the East Coast line and that
Delta on line one, Governor. Yeah, that kind of thing.
There definitely would be. But that's there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people have got different economic interests. They're certainly entitled to assert their position. I kind of had a question listening to you. I mean, both of you have a lot of knowledge of the technologies of this, and I'm kind of here representing government in some way. What do we do in government that impedes, or what do we fail to do that doesn't support the kinds of things that you're talking about? I mean, in what way are we part of the problem?
So I think my perspective would be some of it's about funding. I think some of the problem is that the gap has grown so wide between what the country needs in terms of infrastructure. So helping to stimulate sources of funding, be open to innovation. We tender for a number of things where people say you've got to run on these rails and you can't consider something different. I think be open to the possibility that things will change and flex. Those kind of and the permitting. The time it takes to I come from having lived in Dubai. Now, I'm not advocating a dictatorship. What I would say is, when there's not that big debate now, and we need some debate, but I think there's so much that is caught up in red tape and bureaucracy that we could take 30 or 40% off of the time it takes to go from thinking of the idea to implementing it, just by doing some of those basics right. But there's some great examples going the other way.
No, I would echo what you say. I think you have an impossible job because you need to plan in 4-year increment because you need to get reelected, and most of these projects take long term. Just a mass transit project, by the time we decide, we start digging, likely the politician needs to get reelected again. And when you're digging up the streets and it's in the bad time, it's not most popular to talk about this project. So in countries where they're able to plan longer, it's easier to do the right thing for the long term. So how do you do that in a democracy? I think this is something we need to answer.
It's huge, right?
It's a huge problem.
It does take leadership, but also it takes talking and imagining the possibilities. And when you look at these cities, and we have the great privilege of knowing so many, the ones who get on top and get this stuff moving, they get ahead, and they attract investment and they attract talent, and I think that leadership, that preparedness to go through that short-term barrier for what you believe in, that diminishing the political risks by really engaging with the community.
It's a huge issue, though. I mean, you bring up a really important point that maybe I should have brought up earlier, which is in China, you want to build the maglev train, right? They're not asking the farmer if he wants to sell the land.
Yeah.
Well, right? The train is going through the property one way or the other. Here, we have personal property rights, and the farmer's like, you know what? I ain't selling. I don't care how much money you have. My grandpappy had this land, so now we got to do this.
So I've just come from a city where there are 6 parts to it. There's a desperate need for a huge investment in transportation. And you know, every big scheme gets voted down 5-1. You know, so if you're not careful enough.
Guess, is it a U.S. city? Can we give us a clue?
It's not a U.S. city,
Okay.
so I'm not going to like Phil. I'm not going to get drawn. But look, the bottom line is that it needs leadership to break through, bring all that stuff together, imagine what's possible, and get moving. And I think.
You think we can do it here in the United States?
Yeah,
I'm not asking
I've
for
heard that.
political.
Look, there's some amazing talent. There's some great innovation. There's a real need. So yeah, we can do it. We are doing it.
No, I think you'd find a lot of people who are perfectly willing to look beyond a 4-year time horizon. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we do that goes beyond that. What is difficult to deal with is if it's something, the progress of which requires it to be like all the money on the front end, and it's a disaster 4 years from now with everything torn up. So to the extent to which you can make things work in incremental fashions where each increment improves in some way the system for the individual, that kind of thing is much easier to do, much more politically acceptable.
Well, it's also good ideas gone bad, right? In cities where they charge for the rent, the bikes, the share bikes, if you have to put a quarter in or $1 in, you lock them in like a city bike in New York, and they have them all over the world. Montreal, I think, has them. In the cities where they went to the free bikes because they're trying to be like forward thinking, the bikes are just stolen and left all over the place, and residents complain that it's an eyesore. There's good intentions gone bad too. We have to be careful of.
Yeah,
right?
People are trying to figure out that last mile, and these free bikes, freestanding bikes, well, they become a problem because they pile up in one place, and so keeping a certain organization in all of this is very important. We talked about the challenge for politicians. Very often a system will redefine out where people live. So that's why it's so long term. There's condos, apartments, new homes that need to be built around the station. And the city can benefit from that tremendously because the tax system can be adjusted for people that benefit. But getting all of this done before the system is in place, very, very difficult. So is there a way to disconnect infrastructure planning to people that have to be reelected often? I don't know. That's another complication.
Yeah, but leave us, Steve, quickly. We got to wrap up with an optimistic note. Combine the two panels. Are we closer to a world where we're going to be able to just move around, whatever? If you're super able, whatever your condition is, vision impaired, you can get around, and things are going to be better 100 years from now than they are now.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think because of all that great new tools, innovation, capability to solve a problem that's difficult, but we're getting more and more ways to solve it. We've got some great people and a real need.
We got to end on the optimistic note. That's why we're all here. It's a big thinking convention. Steve, Pierre, Phil, Governor, thank you both very much. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. And thank you all for coming to the panel. Have a great conference. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.